I think you guys gotta go there. Sorry, didn't.
All right. I didn't know whether the intro was playing and we just couldn't hear it. Usually that happens. What's up, everyone?
What a start!
A little bit of a slow start, but we'll get right into it. Welcome to the Lock Shop, gang. This is going to be a fun one. We got lots to get to. The return of Connor McDavid tonight. I know everyone in Edmonton is fired up about that. Big wins for the Jets last night. The Leafs, couple shutouts. So Jake Bowen-Moss and I are in great moods. And we've got a pretty interesting Thursday nighter to look ahead to, as well as Week 10 in the National Football League. JBM, what's going on, my friend? How are you?
Doing well, Huss. That was a hot start. I was seeing the chat start to react to it here now. So, yeah, we're used to the music playing after the intro, but we just missed our music opening there. So no biggie. It happens.
I just assumed it was playing, and sometimes we can't hear it, so I was just trying to time it out.
Listen, that's
welcome to the Lock Shop,
right? That's live programming, right? So sometimes we hit a bump in the road. No biggie. It's a solid night, Huss. I mean, I don't think we have to get into the main story of the night. That's all those odds are behind us. We can
Connor Hellebuck's shutout, the 12-1, the number one team in the NHL. That's all anyone's talking about today.
That's all we got to worry about. Couple nice shutouts, both our teams winning. Especially when the Leafs beat the Bruins. No Austin Matthews. It's a good feeling. They hadn't beat the Bruins in 8 regular season games. It's been one of those teams. Like you talk about snake bitten. They've been struggling to score. They get 3 power play goals last night, and the power play we talked about has been struggling this season. Nyes seems to be this young Matthew Nyes. I know in Toronto they talk about him, like crazy, but I don't know how much the rest of the league knows about this guy. He's a great presence, net front presence, a big body, can get into the corners, can win puck battles. Super, super impressive game from him. And they got it going without Austin, and that's good to see. Next man up in Toronto, I think they got a back-to-backer Friday, Saturday with the Hall of Fame game against Detroit on Friday. So, yeah, good stuff.
Yeah, well, listen, a big win for the Leafs. Here in Winnipeg was, just a clinic, basically. I know they credited Utah with 5 high-danger chances. They were being very generous with those last night. If many people are like you and have Connor Hellebuck in fantasy, you got credited with 21 saves. There was not more than 2 or 3 that were the really challenging style. And listen, the one thing the Jets have been doing is scoring a ton of goals lately. Utah played hard, and they played within a system. And it was sort of, waiting for something to happen on both sides for the better part of the first game. But once again, speaking of power play, Jets power play clicks, and then Nino Niederreiter in his 900th game takes over, 2 goals in the third period, a 3-0 win. And listen, Jets have the Avalanche tomorrow, and of course the Avalanche were the boogeyman in the playoffs last year. The biggest news, while we talk about Connor McDavid returning to the lineup, Jake, is some concerns about Cale Makar. He's right there at the top of the league scoring leaders. He and Nathan McKinnon have basically single-handedly been carrying the Avalanche to the limited success that they've had so far this year. And, I heard Elliot Friedman talk about this. Again, we don't have an update from Jared Bednar. I would be surprised if he played tomorrow in Winnipeg. But as much as the Avalanche need their number one defenseman back and playing, the timing of any injury right now of a top player in the NHL is going to be dealt with through 2 lenses. One, of their club team, but also if they're Canadian, American, Finnish, or Swedish, through the lens of what this means moving forward. Because, as we're getting ready, we should talk about this as well and remind some people about that amazing 4 Nations contest up on Coolbet. We're about a month away from getting the team selected, and then the excitement is going to ramp up even more. But, a perfect chance actually for you to just mention for any people that are betting NHL right now at Coolbet to make sure that they opt in and get some raffles, some tickets in the raffle for what will be an absolutely amazing trip to Boston for the championship game of the 4 Nations tourney.
Yeah, well, let's start there. So you head over to the promotions page. I believe you have to be logged in. I think when I was watching your guys' video from yesterday, I think that might have been the issue why you couldn't see it on your end.
Yes. I
it was a
just
login
pulled that
issue.
quicky on Remus. He wasn't ready for it. I just started talking about it.
That's okay. So anyways, log in, head to the promotions page, and if you go to the sports area, you'll see I'll actually read it out to you. So if you go over to the sports, you slide over, it says shipping up to Boston, win a trip to Boston for the Four Nations face-off. Click into that, and it's a trip for two. So what you get is 2 round-trip flights to Boston, a 2 nights hotel accommodation, and 2 tickets to the Four Nations championship game. You hope Canada's in it. Obviously, we can't control who's going to make it there, but 2 tickets to the Four Nations championship game. That's February 20th. And all you have to do, you opt into the campaign. So if you go right to the top of the campaign page, there's an opt-in button in green. You can't miss it. Click that, and then you submit the promo code, which is BOBBOS. So Best on Bets Boston. You submit that promo code, and you're in. So then once you're in, you need to make bets. So for every $20 bet on the NHL, you get 1 raffle ticket. I've already seen some names. If you head down to the leaderboard, you'll see your name there. Huss, you're there. You've got a few tickets. Our guy Albie's there. He's got 12 tickets. You can see everyone's tickets. So if you're wondering if you have any tickets, you can head over to the leaderboard, check those out. And this is going to run all of November and December. So you're going to bet on the NHL anyways. You might as well be opted into this campaign. And once you're opted in, you bet that $20 and you get a raffle ticket towards the NHL. So, yeah, that's basically the campaign. There's also a second and third place prizing. So, after we announce the grand prize, we'll also have some additional winners. Second place will get a Coolbet bonus, $250, and third place will get a Coolbet merch prize pack that I'll send out to them as well. So, yeah, some good prizes there. Coming up on the Christmas season here, and it'd be great. You get a trip to Boston, in the new year for the Four Nations Cup. We haven't seen international hockey with the NHL pros in a good little while here, Huss. 2014 is the last time we saw guys from the NHL.
I mean, listen, I know we had that business with Team North America, which was kind of cool.
2016, I guess that was World Cup.
But I mean, it wasn't best on best. I mean, that was the whole gripe with that tournament, that while we got a chance to see new looks, and I mean, the USA was screwed. I mean, many of their top players were on the Austin Matthews and Jack Eichel were on the Young Stars team, or Team North America, whatever they called. I mean, you had Scheifele, you had McDavid on those clubs. I mean, we need those guys playing for their countries. So, and again, this is going to be a bit of a teaser for the Olympic Games, but it is not going to diminish anything of this competition going forward. And listen, the next month, I think we're going to be dominated by, in every Canadian market, talking about who's going to be on the team, who will represent, the Edmonton Oilers. I mean, obviously, you've got a few locks. I would think Evan Bouchard probably is in that mix as well. I mean, probably on the team, considering what he's done over the last couple of years. It's going to be Connor McDavid. Zach Hyman's had a really slow start. A lot of people thought that he was kind of automatic. Just put him up there with Connor and let them do what they're doing. So anyways, those conversations are going to be great. But bringing it back to this, if you are betting on the NHL, make sure you opt in and get as many raffle tickets as you're eligible for what should be an absolutely awesome trip out to Boston to make this happen. We're getting to some football talk in a minute, but why don't we take a look at these 3 games tonight? Bit of a slower night in the NHL after a busy one last night. We started off in Washington, where the Capitals are taking on the Predators. And Jake, I'll say this, the Capitals were sort of I know they made the playoffs last year, but it was sort of like there was 15 playoff teams, and then there was whoever got that last one in the East, and they really didn't belong. They were out quickly. We kind of thought, or at least I did, that this season would be not about the Caps winning very many games, would just be about setting up Ovechkin to score, get the record. They made some big moves in the offseason, including taking on the Dubois contract, and he offensively has had a relatively slow start, but seems to be playing a pretty important role. But the Caps have quietly started out to a very good 8-3 record. Meanwhile, the Predators, who we joked that we raised the banner for them as the offseason champions right after July 1st with all their big signings, it just hasn't clicked so far. It's still a work in progress. They're well out of a playoff spot right now. 4-7-1 on the season so far. You look at this matchup; it is in Washington. Despite the records, the Caps are a relatively short favorite at -119, and the Preds just above even money at +101.
Yeah, listen, I still think the Preds are getting a lot of love. Like they were truly the off-season darlings. People saw the moves they made and they were like, wow, Nashville could be good. And they really haven't shown that early this year. These two teams are almost like opposite with their off-seasons. We didn't have a lot of expectation for the Capitals. Like you said, we expected it to be like, let's get Ovi this record. Let's do everything in our power to do so. And they're finding ways to win hockey games. Dylan Strom's had a great season. He's top 10 in league scoring right now with 17 points. I'm just looking at the score sheet here. And the Preds have really been underwhelming. Like, we've kind of been waiting for them to turn it on, get on a little bit of a run here, and it just hasn't happened for them. I don't know. I don't know what it's going to take. There's still the talent's all there. It's just a matter of really putting it together. I think Saros has had a rough start to the year, which doesn't help when you don't get good goaltending. And yeah, like you said, Capitals at home, just a slight favorite at -119 of a team that's been clearly better. If we're just looking at how these two teams have performed early in the season, you would probably take the Capitals in this spot. I am a little hesitant to just jump on them that easily, but I don't know. Maybe I'm a fool for thinking the Preds are better than they truly are.
Well, I just think that the Caps are sort of undervalued in this spot. I mean, like Nashville, we'll be betting Nashville at some point, but I mean, you kind of got to see a little bit more, I think, to get on them. And I mean, if we want to look at what Nashville has done recently, last time out, they got shut out by the Kings at home. By the way, Kings looking good on this road trip. They pounded Minnesota last night, 5-1. The Kings Minnesota only had one regulation loss so far this season. And the Kings did that on the second end of a back-to-back, so very nice. They beat the Avalanche 5-2 and then got crushed by the McDavid-less Oilers and lost to the Lightning before that. I mean, they've beaten up on a few. They had that 3-game winning streak. They had Columbus, they had the Blackhawks and the Bruins who was struggling. And other than that, started off with a 5-game losing streak. I don't know. I think I'm in the camp of Washington tonight. I mean, especially playing at home, kind of rolling the way they are. Their last few games, we'll just pull this up right now for we can do it. Yeah, they're coming off a tough loss to the Canes 4-2, but before that had won 8 of their last 9. And have been playing pretty consistent and scoring some goals as well, which is something that Nashville's had a real issue doing. So off the bat, I kind of do like that -119 on the Caps. Two teams, listen, we got Detroit and Chicago next up. Detroit's -120 favorites. The Blackhawks are +102 at home. I saw Detroit last week when the Jets went in, I guess a week today, last Wednesday. And we were asking ourselves, well, how the heck is this team sort of 500 right now? And dug in a little bit more. Their goaltending had been really good because other than that, they had not been playing very well at all. And I mean, it wasn't really a close game at all. Jets won 6-2. Now, since then, they've only played one game in the past week. This game against Buffalo, they won at home 2-1. Now they get out on the road to take on the Blackhawks. And listen, the Blackhawks are one of these scrappy teams. I mean, they're going to try and make you earn the wins. And they've actually won 3 of their last 4, albeit against the Ducks. A surprising win against the Kings. They lost to the Sharks and beat the Avalanche. All those were on the road. This is the first game back after the road trip, coming back from California. I'm kind of leaning Wings here in this case, knowing what an important game is for them. And, as I say, I don't want to play too much into the narrative of the first game back from the road trip. But the way I saw it, I mean, Detroit needs to get desperate right now if they don't want to see themselves fall out of it. And I think the Hawks have maybe been playing a little bit over their heads.
Yeah, Detroit, another one of those teams that were waiting to take that jump. They had a great run at the end of last season, just nearly missed out on the playoffs with, some really fun games down the stretch that they needed to win. Kind of waiting for them to kind of take off, and it's been another slow start here with, it's them, Ottawa, and Buffalo are 3 teams that you're just like, what are you waiting for? Like, when are you gonna take that jump? Even like, people thought Ottawa went off to a nice start. They're 6-6 now, 12 points. Like, no one's out of the race in the Atlantic. I'm not putting anyone in that scenario, but those three teams are stacked up right back to back to back. Sens, Red Wings, Sabres, 12 points and 11 points for the other two. Just waiting on them. Yeah, I think, I know you don't want to read into Chicago coming back home after a long road trip, but you go out west, you come back to Chicago. I mean, I don't mind the spot either for the Red Wings there. So, I mean, we're building towards something here. Maybe two favorites to start. What do you like tonight? Oilers actually, to me, I think this is surprisingly almost a minus 150 favorite. I know they're at home, but Vegas has been pretty solid.
Oh, I was surprised. And I think this is indicating the return of 97. And he'll naturally move lines and naturally give them a bump. This is a tough spot, though, man. Vegas has been really good this year. They sit, I guess they're 2 points back of the Kings, but they do have 2 games in hand. They'll get one of those tonight. And with the exception of that loss to the Kings in LA 3-0 a few days ago, they have rattled off 5 wins in their last 6 games. And I guess I saw that Senators game, which was, a game that Ottawa had really late they were up in the final 5 minutes and ended up giving up 3 goals in the final 3. But they just seem to be rolling right now. I mean, the Oilers had their kind of slow start, but in some ways, I think a lot of different guys stepped up in the absence of Connor McDavid. Now, they did get shut out by the Devils, but I thought that win over Calgary, the win over Nashville, particularly led by Draisaitl and Hyman, was big. But I just don't know where the Oilers are right now. And listen, this is a big, big matchup for them in the division. And they are going up against it with a McDavid that hasn't been playing. Although the guy is so good, to be honest, when he gets back out there, I mean, are we really going to notice that he hadn't played for a week or so? Probably not. The fact of the matter is that even with him in the lineup, I think this is really a very tight matchup that probably has the Oilers getting a little bit too much chalk considering what Vegas has done so far this year.
Well, our guy Rodzi is in the chat. That's what I was just giggling about. 0 wins on the road for Vegas, and it's true. I mean, I'm looking at the schedule here. Every one of their wins is at home this season. They have 4 losses at Washington, at Tampa, at Florida, and at Los Angeles. So they're going to Edmonton. That bodes well for the Oilers if you're looking at just how Vegas has been on the road this season. I don't mind the over
That's
either.
crazy.
I know it's a big number at 6.5, but you look at Vegas, they've been scoring some goals. You go back to the Los Angeles game, October 22nd, 6 goals against Ottawa, 7 against San Jose, 5 against Calgary. They lost 6-3 to Los Angeles, and they won in overtime 4-3 to Utah on Saturday. So, they get a bit of a break. They head to Edmonton. They get McDavid back. Like, I don't know. Let me check the goalies here quickly. I don't mind the over there. I mean, if we were doing it in a parlay, we could probably move it. It might be a little juicy. Minus 185 isn't awful at 5.5. But another thing I could probably look into. Yeah, no confirmed goalies yet. They have Aiden Hill and Stuart Skinner both unconfirmed. But Hill hasn't had a great start. He's getting the wins. He's 5-2, but he's got a 3.15 GAA, 8.74 save percentage. Skinner also not too great. 3-4-1. He's got a 3.3 GAA, 8.81 save percentage. So maybe something to keep in mind there if we do want to build a little parlay, if we're worried about Vegas having not won a road game.
And the other thing is I think our friends in Edmonton are not going to want to jump on board with us if we've got the Vegas Golden Knights. And to be honest, I don't feel it feels dirty as well, thinking that they would win this game. I do like the over, though. I think Vegas is still going to be scoring goals, and I do think the Oilers are going to get a nice bump from 97 getting back in. So if we do Detroit, Washington on the money line and over 6.5, including OT, plus 523, you get a boost. We'll probably push that up into the upper 500s.
Yeah. I mean, and here Rod said, never mind. The stat's gone. He had a stat there a second ago. Spency says Hill's stats aren't that good either. Yeah, I mentioned that. I said he's got the wins, but he doesn't have good GA, good save percentage. So yeah, looking for some fireworks tonight. I like that, Huss. A couple favorites in the over. I mean, I think Edmontonians can get on board with that. They're going to be rooting on their team, but why not root on a few goals? And hopefully it comes down to that final game where we can put some pucks in the net.
All right. Skinner is confirmed. Rod Z, stop talking Vegas up. Gross. You bet Vegas. I will leave. 0 wins on the road. Rod, don't worry. Bet. Okay, here we go. Bet over the total in Vegas games after having won 4 of their last 5 games. Over's record since the 2024 season, 17-5. Perfect.
There it is. Perfect.
Hey, Rod. Rod's backing us up. We're going with the over 6.5, Edmonton, Vegas, and then taking those other 2. We'll throw that up in the probably in the combo cards a little bit later on, and we can get into it. All right, listen, before we get to the NFL, certainly out around here, people are fired up for the big Saturday in the Canadian Football League. Now, I probably won't see much of this Argos Alouettes game because we've got a big tilt with the Jets and the Dallas Stars at 2 p.m. before ripping down to the stadium for the 5:30 kickoff with the Bombers and the Riders. This is a real tight one, though, Jake. Montreal is the 2-point favorite, and to me, this is a money line game. With Toronto and Montreal. Alouettes minus 139. Argos plus 115. Argos put up the 50 burger last week. Chad Kelly's playing really well. Their defense, to me, is what really, really sets them apart. Now, I know Montreal has a great coaching staff, and they've got that extra week. But the closer we get to Saturday, with the momentum that Toronto's on, thinking about what Montreal did to Toronto when the roles were reversed last year and Kelly had the worst game of his career, I kind of like the Argos as a money line underdog to upset the Alouettes and make their trip to Vancouver in the Grey Cup.
Yeah, I think you're totally right in terms of the money line play. I mean, if you like the Alouettes, minus 140-ish isn't an awful number. And at the end of the day, all that matters in this game is a win, right? So, I tuned in. I caught, the back part of the second quarter in that Argos game last week. It was kind of back and forth, and then I checked the final score, and they put up 58 points. So, they're making a statement against Ottawa last week at home. They got to go to Montreal now. But you're right. It's a total revenge factor here. Like, we weren't sure. Remember all the talk we had about Montreal last year? And, they had such a great record against everyone but those – those big top teams. And then they went in and take on Toronto, and they made their own statement on the way to, a championship. So, the Owls, they've had a solid season. They really, from jump, they were really solid. But I think, like you said, the momentum with this Argos team is what can put them over the top. And, you're getting a plus money number on them right now, a team that is really rolling in terms of, offensively. And I think they had 2 pick sixes at the end of last game.
Yeah, that was, basically they put up 44 on offense. They were leading by, I want to say 11 or so. And then, Ottawa just had to start chucking it although credit to the Argos D. It wasn't just a bad play and the guy took it and had daylight. There was a lateral involved. There was, I
did see that in the box score.
Hell of a highlight. And then they got another one to put it over the 50 mark. So that's Toronto, Montreal. I am leaning, I guess we'll kind of lock in picks tomorrow or Friday for this one. And I can't say that I'm surprised that this line came down. I was expecting the line to be 3 when it was set that Saskatchewan was playing Winnipeg here in the Peg. It opened at 4.5. I think on yesterday's lock shop or the day before, as we were talking about it, it moved, and it didn't just move to 4. It moved straight to 3.5. The Bombers will certainly get the benefit of the doubt from a lot of bettors, just based on the fact that they've won the West Final for the last 4 years. They had the bye. They were the first place team. But make no mistake about it, this game could go either way. Obviously, being a Winnipeg guy, I hope that the experience that the Bombers have had, their ability to prepare for the Riders a little bit longer, and the rest last week will help them out. But to me, I certainly understand why people were jumping on the Riders at plus 4.5. Their last 2 games, a 2-point win for Winnipeg in the Labor Day game, a 5-point win in Winnipeg in the Banjo Bowl. And to be honest, I think Saskatchewan's in a much better place. They've got Ouellette back. They've got Rock Armstead. I mean, that two-headed monster in the backfield. And listen, it's going to come down to taking care of the football. Trevor Harris had a couple picks in that game here in Winnipeg in the Banjo Bowl. He's been taking care of the football and playing really, really well right now. So this game is close to a toss-up. I will tell you that there's value on the Riders. I kind of think that they're being underestimated a little bit. Maybe I just like a lower number on the Bombers, and I'm trying to manifest that into happening. But right now, 3.5 for Winnipeg in that West Final on Saturday. And for you Winnipeg people, make sure to take a look at what we've got in the exclusives, because I can pretty much guarantee you we'll have the big Winnipeg Super Saturday doubleheader with the Jets taking on Dallas and then the Bombers taking on their arch rivals, the Saskatchewan Rough Riders. NFL, we got a Thursday nighter tomorrow, Jake.
A real Thursday nighter.
As I said, the Sunday nighter between Minnesota and the Colts, that felt like one of those old Thursday nighters, color rush, Jags, Titans, AFC South Super Bowl. Not this week, though. I mean, Baltimore coming off that destruction of Denver against a Cincy team that got their win and is keeping their hopes alive, but at 4-5, staring up at 2 6-win teams in their division. Huge opportunity for Cincy. And if you remember this game, when they played earlier this year, that one came right down to the wire. It was a 41-38 final. When the Bengals were having, a tough start out of the gate. But this one is in Baltimore. What do you think of the fact that the Ravens are laying 6 at home to a division rival in this case?
Yeah, I thought that was interesting. Just when I open up the line here, 6 points is a lot of points. I know the Ravens have been rolling pretty well. They did have that loss a couple weeks back. The Bengals, it's so hard to get a read on this team. Like, just when you think they're kind of going to start rolling, they kind of have a hiccup. Obviously, they did well last week against the Raiders, but we know the Raiders aren't a great football team. This is an absolute step up in competition. They've seen them already this season. Baltimore's still allowing a ton of air yards to opposing teams. It's the run defense that it's been really solid for Baltimore. The pass defense, not so much. So that'll be an interesting factor. Is Joe Burrow able to score his way to a victory? But I think that's what it's going to come down to, right? At the end of the day, I don't think Baltimore is going to have a hard time scoring the football. The Cincinnati defense hasn't really lived up to what we've seen over the last few years. And, if you want to play against the Ravens, you're going to have to put up some points as well. So over is a big number. I don't love just taking monster overs like that. It used to be my favorite thing to bet. But 53 points. I think the last game these two teams played where there was a ton of points as well.
It was 79.
Yeah. So
it was 41-38.
I can't guarantee we're going to see that again. That was the game that went to overtime, and McPherson misses the kick. They really didn't set him up very nicely. They gave him a pretty monstrous kick that he didn't make, and then Henry had a huge rush in overtime to get them in range and finish the job. So in a divisional game, 6 points is a lot. I'd probably lean the Bengals. But I think it's going to be if the Bengals are going to be in this football game, they're going to need to score points. So I also lean the over. Maybe this is a perfect teaser spot, Huss. You get the Bengals. If you go to the Bet Builder, let's see right now. I'll just do this live. If you go to the Bet Builder and you get the Bengals, say at 13.5. So you go Bengals team to cover the point spread. Bengals plus 13.5. That's a pretty big number. You get 7.5 points to the spread. And, we move the over down to 40, 45.5 or 46.5 maybe. Let's see. Over 46.5 gets you to even money. So, you get the Bengals plus 13.5, over 46.5. That's Bengals to keep it within nearly 2 touchdowns and a little bit less on the points. That gets you even money at plus 100. So that's probably how I'm going to bet this game. Just talking through it, I think, if the Bengals are going to be in it, they're going to need to score points. I think the Ravens will have no problem doing that. And, divisional game, I don't expect the Ravens to necessarily blow them out. I'm going to play it that way.
Some notes on Some notes on this game right now. First of all, if you noticed that Lamar Jackson missed practice yesterday, don't worry about it. He will play. I'm just reading right here. For the second straight game, he'll play despite missing practice time. Didn't participate Tuesday, which is the only full session of the week because of a knee injury. But just like last week, the lack of practice time won't affect the reigning NFL MVP's availability for Thursday against the Bengals. And Harbaugh confirmed that Lamar will be playing on Thursday night. From the Bengals side of things, this is maybe a little bit of a fantasy, not as well. Zach Moss, who actually played quite a bit early on this season, is placed on IR and will likely be out for the rest of the season, which means the Canadian Chase Brown is going to be the guy moving forward. Listen, Moss wasn't really doing much the last few weeks. It seemed like Brown was carrying more and more of the workload. But when we look at this game, much like the earlier one, and if I'm not mistaken, I think Joe Burrow might have thrown for 5 touchdown passes in that loss. This is going to have to be an absolutely monster Joe Burrow game if they want to actually win this football game. Because a win, like if Cincinnati were able to win this game, Jake, they get to 5-5, and the Ravens, with their ridiculous losses to Cleveland and Oakland, in addition to the Chiefs, they could actually climb to within one game and have the split of the season series if they can win.
Yeah, it's a huge swing, Huss. Like that's why 6 points seems like a lot to me. Like maybe
I agree.
I'm looking too deep into it. Like, we talked about last week, we thought 9.5 was too big for the Broncos. It ended up being not the case. Baltimore blew them out. I just don't know if that's going to be the case with Joe Burrow. Like that's a big step up from Bo Nix. Just looking at Joe Burrow's stats from the last game against Baltimore, 30 for 39, 392 yards passing, 5 touchdowns. He did have 1 interception. But yeah, 137 passer rating. So pretty good performance from him. He definitely wasn't the reason they lost that last game against Baltimore. They're going to be looking for revenge, and they've actually, believe it or not, been better on the road this season. They're 1-4 at home.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's another factor where it's like, Baltimore not necessarily an easy place to play in, but they are 3-1 on the road. Like, maybe Burrow strives a bit more with that away crowd, finds a way to get it done. T. Higgins, another one that we got to circle and say, is he going to play this week? Short rest. He didn't play last week. He's a big factor in that offense. Like, how much him being out, is that going to affect Cincy? Got to keep an eye on these injury reports, like you mentioned, Huss. Like with Lamar out at practice, he's going to play. But T. Higgins, last time I checked, he was still up in the air in terms of status.
No, Field Yates looks like Bengals will be out with T. Higgins for a 3rd straight game.
Again, yeah.
It's unfortunate. Quad injury yesterday. And that really adds a lot. That team is so different with Higgins, and I still can't believe he got busted up at the end of a Friday practice. They got to find a way to keep him around, because we have seen like they are nowhere near as potent offensively when he's out of the lineup. I mean, yes, you got Jamar Chase, you got a bunch of other good weapons, but he really does seem to be such a difference maker. Looks like they're likely aiming for week 12, although Cincinnati has a week 12 bye. But at that point, their season could be lost right now. So we'll see what happens. But of course, T's going to get his money at some point.
How about this, Huss, from Murad Z? Bet on Zach Taylor in away or neutral games in a 6-point teaser versus good passing teams, averaging 235 or more passing yards per game. Taylor's record in a 6-point teaser as a coach of Cincinnati, 16-0. So, I mean, if you're building a teaser for the weekend, that might be where you start with the Bengals +6, get them up to 12, and then you can go from there.
One other bit just while we're talking about this game, and we'll have to see if we can get this up, but Mike Gesicki has actually exploded since T. Higgins has been out. But the guy that's really taken the hit is Jamar Chase. Like, just in fantasy PPR points, Gesicki has 61.2 in the 4 games without T. Higgins, so averaging over 15 per. Jamar Chase is at 54.1, and the air yards, 239 for Gesicki, 182 for Chase. and receiving yards, 282 for Gesicki and 194 for Chase. It's quite clear that without T. Higgins, Joe Burrow is getting the tight end more involved. That Iosivas or whatever his name is, that has been on the waiver wire. He got into the end zone last week. But it kind of seems like, well, Jamar Chase is always going to be the number one target. Teams are going to play him a lot tighter, which has allowed Joe Burrow to start making things happen with his tight ends a little bit more. So that's something you can take a look at. See if we can get Gesicki up in those props. So that's tomorrow. We'll kind of lock that in, but I'm with you on the Cincy and the points. And something tells me, and just like the Baltimore, they should be up for this game. But, man, the quick turnaround, Lamar being dinged up. We've seen this team play down to their level of opponents. And, they lost at home to the Raiders and they lost to Cleveland. So I don't know what to tell you. This game is definitely winnable for Cincinnati, but I'd feel way better if T. Higgins was in this game. But otherwise, we'll might be playing that teaser. Let's take a look at the rest of these games for the week. And how about this London game, Jake? You're going to get up early for Giants and Panthers? Or maybe it's in Germany. But anyways, one of the Europe games. Bright and early, 8:30, Sunday morning. Yeah. Danny Dimes, Bryce
Eastern
Young.
Here. No, I don't think I'm going to get up, to be honest with you. I might sprinkle something on the game, but what can you bet on this game? I mean, do you like Bryce Young as a 6-point underdog? Do you want to plug your nose and take the under and hope to wake up to a sloppy, low-scoring game in Germany? I don't know. It might be a player prop game, Huss. Yeah, that Jalen Coker, he's been all right for the Panthers. That might be a guy you circle with Deontay Johnson out. If you can get some props on him, I don't know if we have no props yet. So, I don't think I'm going to be setting my alarm, to say the least. If I happen to get up and the game's on, maybe I'll toss it on the TV while I do something else, but not something I'm necessarily excited for. They're definitely, it's a little bit of payback to Germany, I think, with this matchup here.
By the way, can I make a request for something that we can talk about on the show? And I'm also interested in betting. Like, if we go over to the futures, they're all up right now. You got the AFC, you got the NFC, all of the divisions. Comeback player of the year, which we can get into in a minute. Kirk Cousins, even money. Dan Quinn, coach of the year at +2-1. You got the offensive rookie. Just give it to Jalen Daniels now. Defensive rookie of the year, Jared Verse from the Rams is the number one player on the board at -222. Josh and Lamar now tied at 3-1 for the MVP, and Mahomes, after his big Monday night, has gone to 4-1. The usual suspects right there at the top of that list.
Yeah, but that's what you expect, right?
You know what I would love to see? A prop on who will get the number one pick.
Okay.
Enough about, we're going to have lots of time to talk about the teams that are good in the playoffs. What about the teams that suck? Because if you look at the standings right now, and it's kind of wild. You go to ESPN and click on league. We have the Giants, Patriots, Saints, Raiders, Jags, Panthers, and Browns all at 2-7. And then the Miami Dolphins and the Tennessee Titans at 2-6. So, I mean, you basically have 1/3 of the league tied with 2 wins right now. So the possibilities, and obviously the odds will depend on who's playing who and schedules and injuries on that. But to be honest, that might be one of the most fun markets to follow over the course of the second half of the season, because none of those teams I just mentioned is going to be in the playoffs. All of them could use a high draft pick. Many of them could use a quarterback. And again, the Jets and the Cowboys at 3 wins aren't even out of the water right now. So it would be really cool to see the odds on finishing last and getting awarded the first pick. And as I say, I don't even know who the favorite would be right now. I guess it probably would depend a lot on strength of schedule moving forward, because there's a lot of teams that are just complete ass on that list that I just wrote out to you. And I think any of them legitimately have a chance to maybe be picking number one.
Yeah, not a lot of good teams in the NFL right now, Hassan. I mean, you look at a team like the Saints, they gave up Lattimore yesterday to go to Washington. So, they fired their coach. They're on a lose 7 right now. If you look next to the name, they're L7. Like, remember how they started? I'd love to go back and relive week 2 where, my first survivor pool, I've got Dallas at home and they blow Dallas out of the water. And I'm like, oh my God, like, who are these Saints? And then sure enough, since then, they haven't won a football game. Like
Dennis Allen fired.
Dennis Allen's gone, and then Lattimore's out of town. Like, it's going to be interesting to see because they've been in cap hell for a little while here. It's going to be interesting to see what happens with them going forward.
They're even worse, dude. Next year, they're like $66 million over the cap. Right now, I think they're dead last. Them and Cleveland, which is hilarious because they're both in this conversation to potentially get the number 1 pick. But the trades of Watson and Carr have absolutely handcuffed both of those franchises moving forward. And I don't know if both of these teams, if they could be fortunate enough to get a top pick and one of the top young quarterbacks that you can come in on the rookie contract, that might be the perfect bridge to get over the massive mistakes that they made with the Carr. And listen, Carr is a bad mistake. There's nothing compared to what Cleveland's done to their franchise with the whole Deshaun Watson mess.
Yeah, Chris G asked in the chat, who are the top QBs? I think Shedeur Sanders is up there. Yeah, he's projected to go 5th right now. Top QB off the board. Cam Ward out of Miami. He's projected 6th right now to the Raiders.
Sanders is the number 1 QB?
Well, as of Tankathon's mock draft here, they have him 5th to the Browns. Shedeur Sanders, as the number 1 QB off the board. And then, Cam Ward out of Miami. Quinn Ewers out of Texas going 9th to the Titans right now. Obviously, these are all just mocks, but it gives you an idea of, the guys playing good ball right now. Jalen Milroe out of Alabama late in the first round. That looks to be the last QB on the board there in the first round. So, Cam Ward, he's had a really solid season at Miami. They've been able to put up some points. They've struggled to keep other teams off the board. But Colorado, at the start of the year, people were kind of preying on their downfall, and they've really picked it up here and had a good middle of the season. So we'll see how they close it out. Travis Hunter is the best player in college football right now. He plays both sides of the ball, 120 plus snaps a game. Like it's super impressive what he's able to do. He's projected as the number 1 guy right now. You can get him as a DB. He can play receiver. He can catch the ball.
Hunter, the number 1 prospect. I haven't really got too much into that, but I know you're a lot more into the college football than me. But it seems like a pretty amazing athlete doing it on both sides of the football. I'm not sure whether that's going to happen in the NFL, but I always know that a guy can do it. For what it's worth, right now from ESPN, when you just go to the league standings overall, the Giants at 2-7 are the bottom team right now. Giants, Pats, Saints, Raiders, Jags. But again, there's still 8 more games or 9 more games for all these 2-win teams to play. So we'll get to that a little bit later on. All right, listen, just before we go, let's just take a quick look at the rest of these lines for the week in the National Football League and see if anything jumps out to us. We mentioned that game that you're probably not going to get up early to watch, Giants and Panthers. Giants, 6-point favorites. The Bears are 6-point favorites over the Patriots. That's a conversation where the Bears just got completely exposed. I mean, they've beaten some really bad teams. I think all of those teams that they've beaten, I just mentioned, being tied with 2 wins. And finally, Arizona got a big win running away. They're 6-point favorites against your Pats. The Bills, 3.5 in Indy. Indy looked terrible against the Vikings. And listen, credit to the Vikings defense, but I don't know, the way the Bills are putting up points right now, I'm surprised that number isn't a little bit bigger, to be perfectly honest. Yeah,
Bills 3.5 is an interesting number. I mean, the Colts didn't necessarily look that impressive on Sunday Night Football against the Vikes. We were on them. We were hoping they could keep it inside the number, and unfortunately, they weren't able to get the job done to cash a partner parlay for us. Bills have been rolling pretty well here. It's hard to bet against it. That is a fishy line, Huss. I think you've kind of sniffed one out early there where it's like, how in the world are the Bills only 3.5-point favorites against the Indianapolis Colts? Listen, I know I've been high on the Colts. I do like them better with Flacco than Anthony Richardson, but the Bills are much like they're a couple rungs above the Indianapolis Colts. Colts kind of sit in the middle of the league. The Bills are cream of the crop in the AFC, with Baltimore and Kansas City. So that'll be an interesting one. I think I lean Bills. They did bone me last week at -6 at home, but that was a divisional game, totally different against a Colts team that really hasn't been super impressive as of late.
Yeah, definitely lean toward the Bills. And I think I had Chris Beck, a loyal lock shopper in WST, mentioned that I think that opened at 3, and he jumped on it right away. So not surprised that it's going the way of the Bills. The Vikings on the road in Jacksonville, laying 4.5 against the Jags. The Chiefs with another big number that they probably won't cover, but will win. 8-point favorites at home against the Broncos. Only a couple noon games all year for the Chiefs. That will be the traditional early game against Denver. You got the Falcons and Saints, Atlanta laying 4 on the road in the Dome. The Niners in Tampa. Looks like Christian McCaffrey is on the path to return. We'll follow that over the next couple days. They're 5.5-point favorites against the depleted but plucky Bucks, who went the distance with the Chiefs and took them to overtime. Commanders.
While we're on the Bucks for a second,
yeah.
What do you think about this whole not going for 2? Like when you have a chance, I know the game wasn't over yet for Tampa Bay. I know there were still about 30 seconds on the clock, but I mean, Tampa had the opportunity last week. New England had the opportunity. You go for 2, you can take. New England had the opportunity to win the game by going for 2, and I mean, I think it's a win-win scenario. You win a football game and a tight finish with your quarterback making a great play to get the touchdown to get you to that point. But the Bucks, a team kind of in that spot where you're in desperate need of a win. You have a chance to beat the champs who haven't lost this year. You rather take your chances in overtime. You don't even get to see the ball again. Where do you kind of stand on that 2-point conversion late to take, either lose or win the game?
2 things that happened. Todd Bowles blew it big time with their clock management. Like, they did not need to call that timeout at 30 seconds from the 1-yard line. I mean, the amount of time it would have taken for them to get in, even if they had to make it 3-4 plays, was a lot less than that. So what they did was they guaranteed Mahomes was going to have a little bit of time on the clock, even if they did get it. But as a Chiefs fan, I'm sitting here high-fiving my buddies when I saw the kicker come out. Right. I mean, listen, one play, every team will have some great plays that, you feel that you can convert. Like they were sort of playing not to lose more than trying to play and win. It was a great opportunity for them. I couldn't believe that they didn't do it. Now, there are times where I think you'd err on the other side if your defense is playing so well that you have full confidence that you'll be able to get the ball back to do that. But that wasn't the case. Like, I don't know if you saw Baker Mayfield's face at the coin toss when the Chiefs won and got the ball. He was like, oh, like he knew what was going to happen. Everyone knew. Yeah,
and they stuffed it down their throat. It was so I was at hockey. I was listening on the radio on the way home, and I'm listening to the play-by-play, and I'm like, this is just a textbook. I'm going to drive down the field and beat you in overtime, and you're going to do nothing about it. And they did. And it's got to be frustrating as a Bucs fan. Pats fan, I didn't really care that much because, I'm happy with losses at this point of the season. Higher the draft pick, the better. But, yeah, if you're a Bucs fan and you're like, hey, we need every win we can get. We have a chance to beat Kansas City. I know they still would have had a chance to drive for a field goal, but it wasn't a ton of time on the clock. Mahomes didn't do a whole lot with it. Based on the play-by-play, it sounded like he almost threw an interception on 1 or 2 of the throws there in regulation. But, yeah, just one of those scenarios where, I feel like you got a guy like Baker, you don't give him one shot to, you scheme something up, get a guy open, and it's on the 2-yard line, Huss. 2-yard line. Run your touchdown play. Listen,
as someone that was pulling on the other side, I was very happy when they rolled the kicker out. I'll just quickly run through the rest of these lines before we wrap. The Steelers, 3-point underdogs on the road against the upstart Commanders. Washington -3. The Chargers are 7.5-point home favorites against the lowly Titans. The Jets are 1-point favorites. Well, this is a pick 'em. It's -109 on either side. Let's just look at it that way. Jets and Cardinals, straight up pick 'em. Take your pick, -109 on each side. The Eagles are 7-point favorites in Dallas. The Lions laying 3.5 on the road against Houston. That kind of reminds me a lot of that Bills game we were talking about. Like just in the dome. I don't know how you prevent Detroit from putting up 35, 40 points. And with where
Nico
Houston's
might
at
be
right
back.
now. Nico Collins? That is
Maybe.
a game changer. I think I still like Detroit. That's the Sunday nighter, and then the Monday nighter. Dolphins and Rams. Interesting that the Rams are only 1.5 point favorites, but I guess Miami looked a lot more competitive with Tua back in that game against the Bills. But Friday we'll have all those picks. We'll get into it a little bit more tomorrow. We'll have some more hockey picks, and of course make the CFO ones as well. Folks, again, don't forget promotions tab, 4 Nations. Make sure you opt in if you're betting hockey. Good luck on winning that trip to Boston. We've got a big WST coming up. The vibes are high. The Jets are 12-1. Mike Kelly from the NHL Network is going to jump on. Milt Stiegel on the playoffs as well. Should be a good one. And obviously the shows will keep rolling on EST. Hernan coming up. Reed Wilkins later on. It's full programming throughout the day on Edmonton Sports Talk. Dusty, hope you're feeling better, buddy. We'll look forward to having you back soon. Jake, thank you as always. And folks, this has been the Lock Shop presented by Coolbet. We'll see you shortly at WST, and we'll see you tomorrow back here in the Lock Shop. Good luck with your bets.